Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Females Thriving Over 30 podcast. Today, I am by myself. Jasmine is not able to join us because she's on her way to Radlett to give tomorrow a little seminar on the Miss Atlantic, Miss Intercontinental, Miss Mission GB pageant. So you only have myself. I'm Soraya Barrera. I am your co-host for the Females Thriving Over 30 podcast. And today I am joined by the gorgeous Rachel Heslop. In this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about career transitions after 30, the beautiful surprises that life brings out of the blue, and everything that it has to do with being a female thriving over 30 and chasing dreams. So we are filming the interview again in this new program. Rachel is actually our very first guest, our little guinea pig. So fingers crossed, everything goes well. And internet doesn't flop or anything. And this recording is going to work well. And I don't have to edit a lot after, as it happened in our previous test, where the audio was not really synced. It was funny, let me tell you. So let's talk a little bit about our guest today. So Rachel is a 30-year-old small business owner. She's a wife and is a mother of 3, and she's from Newcastle. She's been part of the pageant industry for 10 years after first competing in Galaxy in 2014. And now she has recently come out with the Mrs. Galaxy UK title 10 years after. So that is incredible. During her time in pageantry, she has really advocated about autism and ADHD, as well as educating others about neurodiversity, a passion for which stems from both her sons and her own diagnosis. And currently, Rachel is undertaking training to become a midwife. And at the time of when we prepared this interview, she had delivered her 20th baby. But I don't know, Rachel, if that has changed and you have delivered any other baby since?
I'm still on 20.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome to the podcast. That was a little bit introduction about yourself, but I really much prefer for you to tell our audience who you are and why we have you here in the Female Thriving Over 30 podcast.
Thank you. So, yes, my name is Rachel. I am recently become Mrs. Galaxy UK, which is very, very exciting. It means I'll be flying over to America in August to compete for the international title, which honestly was a dream too big to dream. But I'm super excited for that. I am about halfway through my training to be a midwife. And yeah, today we're talking all about career transitions in your 30s and going from, for me, it was one extreme to the other.
Yes, yes. So maybe we can start there. How did you decide to become a midwife? Why now?
So I've always wanted to be a midwife since I left school. I left school and went to catering college simply because the boyfriend I had at the time was doing catering, which, I mean, no good way to judge what you want to do for a career at all. But yeah, I found myself doing kind of like hospitality and catering at college, which to be fair, at the time I really enjoyed. Um, but before I had even finished that course, I knew it wasn't for me. I knew that wasn't my long-term goal. And I knew I always wanted to do something where I would make a difference, like a tangible difference to at least one person's life where they would never forget me. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I started to kind of do a bit of a career search and stumbled across nursing, kind of influenced by my maternal grandmother a little bit to have a look into nursing, and then come across midwifery from there. And I actually, at the time, I would have been about 17. I applied to do like an access course at college to go on to university to do midwifery and dropped out after about a month. I just think I kind of thought to myself, it's not quite for me right now. Um, so it was kind of put on hold for a while. And then I went off, I went traveling around the world. I moved to the other side of the country, met my husband. We had our two children at the time when I applied to college again to do another access course to be able to get onto midwifery at university. And it was just kind of one of those things where I thought, if not now, then when? If I don't do it now, if I don't grab it with both hands, I'm just going to carry on putting it off. I'd had my two children, and for me, it was cemented even further because the midwife that I had, all of the midwives I had, were so amazing. I know I'll never forget them. And for me, that's that whole, they've made a difference to me that means I will never forget who they are, never forget their faces, never forget their names. It's just like, right, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to do this. Like, pregnancy fascinates me. The whole development of children within the uterus absolutely fascinates me. So I applied to college. I started doing an access to healthcare course, and then applied within a kind of a couple of weeks of starting there, applied for university for the midwifery course. I found out about a week after applying for university that I was pregnant. So that was possibly the biggest shock of my life. I thought the plan was have my kids get that out of the way first, and then have my career kind of going on. That's not how it worked out. um, but actually, I feel like it put me in an even better position now for caring for women. So where we have women who what we call late bookers, so women that find out that they're
Mhm.
pregnant later on. Um, some like NHS trusts have then a bit of a habit of treating them as high risk. So for me, I was instantly slightly higher risk just because I booked late because I didn't find out I was pregnant for a while. So for me, I think that kind of gives me now a bit more perspective of actually just because you've booked late doesn't mean you're then necessarily a high risk, etc.
Yeah.
So it gave, yeah, I feel like it gave me a bit more understanding. It also gave me that understanding of what happens when you find yourself pregnant when you didn't expect to be pregnant and didn't want to be pregnant, in all truth.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the card to have three children. Two was my hard limit. But then, yeah, to find out at the time, I was 16 weeks pregnant, so I was quite far along. And then again, now being able to kind of coming across women who are also in that space where they're not sure what to do, they're not sure which route to take, being able to have that real, I can put myself in your shoes fully and
Hmm.
really understand is just amazing. So I had my third little one whilst I was at college and then started university the following September. And it's just been incredible. Like so much more than I ever thought it would be. And it's hard.
I
It's a
bet.
really, really hard degree. I'm not an academic person whatsoever. I'm very much a hands-on skills kind of gal. So I struggle with the academic work and I struggle with the balance as well because it's so hard leaving such a young family at home to
Hmm.
go off and do the studies. But yeah, it's been a lifelong dream, and sometimes I kind of catch myself, and I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we finally get there.
Of course. Of course. Of course. And so you just mentioned obviously that you found out that you were pregnant with your third child, like
Hmm.
you were 16 weeks pregnant. So well, okay, for everybody that doesn't know, Rachel and I are sister queens. So we both competed in the UK's national Miss system. She won the UK's national Miss title, and I won the UK's national Ms title. So she competed being pregnant and she didn't know it. So,
Didn't have a clue.
like, how was finding out that you were pregnant? Like, how did you find out?
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So with both of my first and my second, Charlie and Ella, I knew with both of them that I was pregnant before I'd even missed a period. I just knew. Like I could tell my body had changed. Something just felt different. I just knew from the get-go straight away. So to then not only realize that you're pregnant, but then realize how far along you are was a massive, massive shock. I remember being at UK's National Miss, and I was in the car with Annabelle and Sarah, and I was having a bit of like a, when you're just feeling a little bit down about yourself, and I was just like, I don't know
Mhm.
what it is. I can't shake it. I just feel a bit, I'm really bloated.
Oh yeah, I remember
I
that.
don't know what it is. And yeah, turns out I wasn't bloated. I was pregnant. And that's why I'd put on a bit of weight, and that's why my clothes were tight, and all the rest of it. That's why I
Yeah.
felt so tired. But none of that was uh, a kind of reasoning for me. So I have PCOS, so I quite often don't have regular periods. So for me, a missed period isn't a sign.
Mhm.
That's no big thing for me. Um, so yeah, that wasn't a sign as like you're pregnant. It was actually I was at work. I used to work at Apple, and I was on a late shift, and I was unpacking some boxes of iPads. And as I bent down, I got really bad heartburn, and I kind of stood up, and I was like, the only time I have ever had heartburn in my life is when I've been pregnant. That's really weird. And then I was like, huh, that is really weird. So I finished my shift at Apple, stopped at Sainsbury's on the way home and bought a pregnancy test. I got home, it was about 9 o'clock at night, half nine at night, and Ryan went out with the dogs, and I was like, I'll just take this test to rule it out.
Yeah.
That was my thing. It wasn't I was testing it to think like I think I am. I was like, I'm just gonna rule it out.
Hmm.
Took the test straight away, two very strong lines. And I was
Of
like,
course.
that's not,
You
I
were
didn't
so
have
far
to wait the
along.
2 minutes. It was so quick. Like it instantly showed up. And I was like, that's not a new thing. I was like, that's not,
It's
I
either
put two
that
and
or
two together,
twins.
and I was like, yeah, I was like, this isn't, I'm not just a few weeks along here. Um, so I got onto my midwife, who I'm really lucky. I've had the same community midwife for all three of my pregnancies, which was just amazing. Um, Again, she's a massive, massive part of why I was sure I want to be a midwife, because she's just amazing. And I rang her, and I was just, and in all truth, like me and Ryan have no qualms about kind of not talking about this. We didn't know what we wanted to do because we weren't prepared for it mentally, we weren't prepared for it financially. Um, we have a lot of kind of stress from Charlie and his autism, and we didn't know
Mhm.
how he would cope with another baby because he struggled at that point. He was struggling with Ella, was lashing out at Ella a bit. Um, so we were just like, we don't know if this is the right time to be having another baby. So I phoned her, and she just kind of sat me down. We talked about it. She was like, right, let's first things first, let's get a scan book. Let's see how far along you are. Went for the scan. As soon as she put the ultrasound probe on my stomach, I was like, that's a big baby. That is not uh like 8 week pregnancy. That's a baby. That's a whole baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was 16 weeks pregnant. So it was probably the biggest shock of my life. But as soon as I realized how far along I was like, well, they're coming now. It's a,
Yeah.
it's a thing. It's happening. Um, and now we would not be without him. Like we always say, Charlie is so full on, and we love him to death, and we would not change him. As much as we struggle with him, as much as he has his struggles, we just wouldn't change him. Um, and we always say that had we known the struggles he was going to have, we probably would have just stopped at one,
Hmm.
um, because of the stress that is involved with an autistic child. But actually, the best thing we could have possibly done for Charlie, and that we've done for Charlie, is for him to have siblings, because actually I think that if he hadn't, he'd be much more withdrawn. He wouldn't be able to tolerate being around other children as much.
Mm.
Ella and Joseph have kind of forced him to have to deal with it.
Yeah. Hmm.
And while sometimes he struggles with that and he's not a big fan of it, equally, now we're getting to a point he doesn't get triggered as often. He is starting to engage in play with Joseph and Ella, which is amazing. Um, yeah, it is just the best thing we could have ever have done for him. And it's nice as well because a lot of the things that Charlie's not interested in, like playing football and all that kind of stuff that like a lot of dads want to do with their sons, Ryan's
Hmm.
now got the chance to do that with Joseph as well, because Charlie's not interested in that stuff, and that's fine. But equally, there's that nice bit of gratification for Ryan for him to be able to do that typical dad lad stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's just funny how life absolutely works out how it's supposed to. And a lot of the time we don't understand why that is and why things go these ways, but it is all absolutely supposed to happen as it should.
Amazing. Okay, so now you've obviously mentioned a little bit about Charlie, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about him, how you found out about his diagnosis. Was he oh my god, was is diagnosed, right? That's the
Diagnosed.
word. Okay. Was he diagnosed by the NHS, like by the doctors and stuff, or was there something that
Mm-hmm.
you found out? How was that whole journey finding out the diagnosis
So
for Charlie?
when Charlie was little, he met all of his milestones really quick, especially his physical milestones. He met really, really quick. He was walking by ear. He was climbing up furniture. He met all of those milestones super, super quick. And he started from between about a year to 18 months. He started saying things like mum, 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 mum. He started to say kind of odd little words, started to say no, started to say dad. And he would do um, things like pointing, he would wave, he would make a lot of eye contact. And then he got to about 18 months and he just started to regress. So he stopped saying mum, he stopped making as much eye contact, he stopped waving and pointing. And you get kind of regular checkups with health visitors at around that age. So we mentioned to her we were a little bit concerned about his lack of speech and that the couple of words he had said he had now stopped saying. So here through the NHS, they don't, in the Northeast anyway, I don't know if it's different anywhere else, but they don't put in a referral for speech and language therapy until they're at least, I want to say it was 2.5. They said they won't even accept a referral until 2.5,
Yeah.
but they probably won't see him until he's 3.
Mm.
I was like, right, okay, that's like a long time to just kind of sit on our hands and do nothing. Especially when everything we were reading was like early intervention's key, and the earlier we can get interventions in place, the better. And so all very frustrating. Um, but he started going to speech therapy, and the first kind of level of that is it's almost like a play group of other kids that were also delayed in talking, where they kind of I describe it as a little bit of teaching a granny how to suck eggs, in that they're kind of like, talk to your child, get down on their level, use simple words. And it is so frustrating as a parent when you've waited a year to get to this point, to get to this speech therapy, and they're just telling you to talk to your child as if you've never tried that. So we went through this kind of group thing. We knew that it wasn't going to be enough for him, but it was like 6 weekly sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for some kids, I can absolutely see how it might help them build on language that they already have. But for Charlie, we just knew it wasn't going to touch the sides. So he then went on to get one-to-one speech therapy, where they came to our house and they would kind of help with like getting us to do turn taking games or trying to use picture symbols and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Again, just to try and build on like the first lot of building blocks that come before speech. And at this point, we were raising things like, the lack of eye contact, the lack of wanting to interact with other children, just a few kind of flags going off in our head, really. And by the time he had his assessment for autism, he was 3. He'd not long turned 3, which actually, now that I know more about how the diagnosis system works, is actually very young, and we were actually very lucky
Mm, yeah.
that he got diagnosed as quick as he did. But we went in to see this pediatrician, and within half an hour of seeing her, she was like, "Yeah, he's autistic." And we were like, "We've waited nearly 2 years for someone to spend half an hour to say yes, he is." Asked us lots of questions and observed him for a little bit. And I think at that point, I already knew that. I'd already kind of settled on it, but a lot of our family and Ryan were still, I guess, hopeful that he wasn't autistic,
Hmm.
and that can that doesn't always land well with people when I say that. But like I was saying this to somebody the other day, when you have a child, you don't ever think they're going to have any struggles. You don't ever think they're going to come across something like autism or a physical disability or a congenital abnormality or whatever it might be. Um, so when they then have an additional need or a disability or whatever it might be, you kind of have to go through a bit of a grieving
Yeah,
process of the child you thought you were going to have.
absolutely.
Um, and I think my family got on board quicker than Ryan's did, which, but I think some of that's a generational thing as well. But I think it took both Ryan's family, my family, longer than I did anyway, to kind of wrap my head around that
Hmm.
fact. Um, and yeah, and since then, really, it's just been a bit of a journey of trying to get as much support in place for him as possible. We're really fortunate now. He goes to an incredible school where he has made so much progress. It's unbelievable. This time last year, I was convinced that he would never talk. I just
Hmm.
kind of accepted that. So he's 7.5 now. So this time last year, yeah, I just accepted he was never going to talk, and now we get loads of words from him all the time, and it's incredible. And like pretty much every day, we get a new word, and he's at the point now where any word you'll say to him, he'll try and repeat back to you. It's not always kind of very coherent,
Yeah.
but we can tell that's what he's trying to say. Um, but he doesn't choose to use language very often. So he physically has the ability, he just doesn't really choose to. But the main thing for us is like now he can communicate his basic needs. So just like he can come in the front room and he'll go, "Mummy, hungry tummy," and then I know that he wants some food. And for me, I never thought that was going to be a thing. It was always he would cry, he'd
Mhm.
get angry. I would try to figure out what it is. Do you want food? Do you want a drink? You go through this whole list of, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Um, so now just the fact he can communicate his basic needs is incredible, absolutely incredible. Um, so I've gone from thinking he was never going to talk to actually, I would be surprised if he doesn't get to a point where he can have enough conversation to get his
Hmm.
point across.
Yeah.
I don't think, and again, he absolutely might prove me wrong again, because he's very good at that. I don't know if he'll ever get to a point where he'll just kind of like engage in conversation like you and I
Hmm.
do. Um, but just the fact that he can communicate his needs is enough for me.
I mean, it's
Absolutely.
amazing. I remember, and I get so happy every time that I see your videos that you post on your stories, because I remember seeing the very first time of him in the kitchen with Ella. She was like really small and like trying to communicate with, like, I think it was like a black something where he was just like a Velcro thing where he was just putting things.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the progress from your last videos when he's like trying to sing and saying words and things like
Yeah.
that. So he's made a huge progress, and it makes me really happy to see every time that you share a video.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is amazing. As you say, yeah. So you had that it's called PEX, which is just basically loads of different symbols, and they try and use the pictures to communicate instead. And he still uses that at school quite a bit because it seems we get more speech at home than they get at school.
Hmm.
Um, so he still uses that at school quite a bit. But yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, he came home with a book, and school had printed off this book because he obviously liked it so much at school. And he sat down, and I was just kind of listening to him, and you can you can tell that he's trying to say something, but it's not always very clear what he's saying. It takes you a little while sometimes, especially if it's a new word. Um, it kind of sounds like gibberish, but like every so often you kind of pick out the odd bit, and you're like, "Oh, that's what we're saying." Okay. And he was sat with this book, and he's kind of no, 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 no. And I look over, and when I'm looking at the words, I'm picking out these odd bits, and he's reading the book. And whilst it doesn't all sound completely coherent how it's actually coming out, he was reading all of the words. Um, and it just blew my mind. And I was just, again, like, I just never thought I would see him reading a book.
Yeah,
It's just amazing. He blows my mind every single day.
that's incredible. Do you think that it's because I think autism right now is like quite high, at least from a lot of
Hmm.
people that I've heard in the UK. Do you think it's faster to diagnose a non-verbal autistic children that the children that are verbal? Because, for example, my nephew, he's autistic, but he has not been formally diagnosed. So he doesn't have the
Hmm.
paper and stuff. So sometimes the schools might not give the attention that he needs
Hmm.
unless he has the proper diagnosis. So do you think that is
Yeah,
because Charlie was nonverbal, was faster to diagnose? Like, oh my
a
God,
100%.
diagnose
I
him.
think, yeah, I think now looking back, I think, oh, yeah, I always say, I think a slap in the face with a wet fish is probably more subtle than Charlie's autism. You can't miss it. You absolutely can't miss it now. He's always walking around, stimming, shaking his hand, shaking his head, walking on his tiptoes, very kind of throaty vocalizations, doesn't really make eye contact, doesn't engage. Like it's obvious. You cannot miss it. Um, so I think that's part of the reason with Charlie. But yeah, I think if you can get by, if you can talk enough to get by, if you
Hmm.
can socially interact enough to get by, you kind of just get brushed under the carpet. And I think some of that, when I started university and I was learning obviously more about Charlie's autism as that was developing, as I was doing more and more reading, I was like, ah, this sounds, some of this sounds familiar. Some of this feels a bit like it's ringing true for myself as well as for Charlie. And anyway, long story short, I then ended up getting my own diagnosis for both autism and ADHD. And as you say, I think one thing is like, yeah, absolutely gets pushed aside if you're verbal because
Hmm.
like you're coping, you're seen as
Yeah.
coping and you're seen as getting by, and therefore you don't need as much support and all the rest of it. But then, as you say, like, whilst I think it's harder to get diagnosed if you're verbal, it's also so much harder to get diagnosed if you're female. Because
We mask
all of
it.
the
It's
criteria,
masking easier.
yeah, we mask a heck of a lot more. We see what's going on with everybody else and we try and portray that on the outside and try and present this image of normal, neurotypical. But also, all of the diagnosis criteria is all based on research and studies on boys.
Oh.
And boys just present differently to girls. Um, so yeah, there's I mean, I feel like every time I meet someone new, especially at the minute, I've just started a new placement in community and a new trust. And whenever I've worked with someone and I've told them about Jai and they've said, "Oh yeah, my son's autistic, this, that, and the other," they're like, "Oh, I've got a nephew, a son, this, that, and the other, and we're really struggling with getting diagnosed at the minute and all the rest of it." And I'm just like, it's just people are let down so much from the process of getting diagnosed. I was lucky enough to get diagnosed through university in terms of having a diagnosis that makes sense for me in my head, but I can't do anything with it. If I want medication for my ADHD, I have to have an NHS diagnosis, and the waiting list for that is 5 years. So,
Five
yeah,
years.
exactly. So, in the meantime, I know I now have this diagnosis. I know that medication could potentially make life a lot easier for me, make things kind of make sense more, make my mind calmer, all of those things. But I can't get it because I need a different letterhead at the top of the paper that says that I'm autistic and have
Mm.
ADHD to be able to then get a prescription. Um, because if you want to go private, the assessment's about £2,000, and then to have your prescription, you have to pay about £200 a month for your prescription. So it's just not affordable. It's not affordable at all to go private. So the waiting list is just huge, and a lot of this will be because there's such a massive backlog of people that haven't been diagnosed because
Hmm.
they've masked, they've been verbal, they've been able to get by, they've scraped through school. So they're just seen as not priority and not kind of, yeah, not important enough
Yeah.
really to warrant this like immediate referral and this immediate diagnosis like Charlie was really lucky to have.
Yeah, that is so sad. And I don't really know what needs to change other than doing these kind of things, talking about it, bringing
Mm,
more awareness so people know. But I don't
hmm
really know what can be done to make sure that the NHS is able to, get the diagnosis happening a little bit
hmm
faster.
I think a lot of it's just the funding for the NHS is just so thinly stretched.
And I wonder,
There's
where is
just not enough healthcare
my
professionals.
taxes
Yeah,
money going?
I know.
Because it's clearly not to fix the road.
I know.
It's clearly not going to the
Nope.
NHS. So who's taking my
Nope.
tax money?
It's those fat cats that are living their life in London with all that money
Oh
in
yeah.
their three houses.
Oh yes,
Yes,
100%. I mean, it's so sad. And again, like many of the things, I do really
it is.
compare them to Spain, which maybe I shouldn't, but I
Mm-hmm.
really do compare it just to Spain, where we have exactly the same thing, right? You pay your taxes, you have your NHS, like Social Security, that pays for your doctors and things like that. We have great roads, beautiful, like it's so lovely to drive in those roads. And one of the things that shocked
Mm-hmm.
me a lot when I first moved here was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a private medical insurance, like I had in Spain. And then if I want to go to the dermatologist, for example, I can just go straight there. I don't need to go through waiting and things like that for things that I need done a little bit
Mm-hmm.
faster. And then I found out that here, you first need to go to your GP. They need to give you
Mm-hmm.
a referral. And then you need to go
Mm-hmm.
and book with whoever. And maybe the difference is just 1 week difference in waiting. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I paying them for? Because in Spain I pay
Yeah.
for my private medical insurance, and I have a list of dermatologists I can go to, and straight away I don't need to go to my GP. So it's a bit
Mm-hmm.
sad that because of funding, people that are struggling with autism, ADHD, and things like that have to wait, as you said, like 5 years. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It is crackers. And I mean, I just think, especially like, there's been times through my training already where I thought, like, this is just too hard. I can't do it. I need to quit. And a lot of that is just because of how my brain works when it comes to studying and doing assignments. Like, every single time I have an assignment, how my brain works to be able to start doing the work is I need the pressure of a deadline to be able to get to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I say every single time, I'm like, no, I'm going to start doing my work earlier. I'm going to be really ahead of it, get on the ball. It never happens. I try my best. It just doesn't happen. I can go to the library every day for a week and I will just sit there and sob. And it sounds ridiculous. And I find it really hard to explain. But I will look at my computer, I'll look at the page of text that I need to read, and it's like my brain can't even read it. It's really, really weird, and it's a really kind of it's so frustrating, which is normally why I end up crying.
Mm.
Um, but it's like my brain just won't let me process it for whatever reason, or I'll read it but I won't take in any of the information that's in there at all. So I just can't get anywhere with it. But then it's like 3 days before, and a switch flips, and then suddenly my brain's like, "Oh, I know," da, 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 and I just crack it out really, really quickly. And it's that whole needing the time pressure thing. But then so many people I know who have gone on to a medication, they're like, that's just not a thing anymore. I can just sit down and work, and it just happens straight away without any frustration and upset and all the rest of it. I'm just like, what a life. What a life. And again, like, I'm going through this training, and how much easier it would be if I had the medication to be able to concentrate properly, to not have every other little bit of stimulus distracting me from what I need to be learning and all of those things. But I can't, because I need to wait 5 years to get an NHS diagnosis to be able to then get the prescription that I'll still have to pay for, but just not quite as much.
Yeah, and
Um,
and still that
yeah,
keep going
it.
up and everything. But oh well,
Mhm.
hopefully one day. Otherwise, let's all just move out of
One
the
day.
UK. It might be easier.
I know, I know.
So you've got pregnant for the third time after you were 30. So
hmm
what's been the difference between having kids before 30 and after 30 Is there any? Is the same? Uh, is this a difficult situation
Um,
because of everything that had gone on in your life that it might have nothing to do with age? Or
yeah, I mean, for me, I was really lucky for all three of my pregnancy. I was very low risk. I don't have, other than the autism and ADHD, I haven't got any other medical like conditions. I didn't develop anything throughout pregnancy other than like a bit of like pelvic pain with Joseph. I was very, very low risk. So for me, to be honest, it wasn't massively different other than the fact I was just very tired because I was also working and had two children. That was the main thing for
and the
me.
pelvic pain, I'm pretty sure it was that race that you did, not knowing that you were pregnant.
Probably, yeah, 2.5 marathon when you're like 4 months pregnant is just not sensible ever, apparently. But yeah, yeah, there was nothing major that kind of impacted it. But like as midwives, we know the older you get, the more health conditions crop up. Like in midwifery, as soon as you turn 35, I mean, they've changed the wording a bit now, so it's a bit kinder. It used to be you were classed as a geriatric mother, but now we say advanced maternal age because it is much kinder. Nobody wants to hear geriatric at
Oh my
35.
god, yes. No.
But actually now it's really interesting because we have far more women who are in their 30s and 40s having children than we do 18, 19-year olds that are having children. And that's quite a shift because typically you kind of go back to the 60s, and like biology tells us as well that the kind of like key time for having children is anywhere from 12 to 36 or 35, I think it is, biologically. Um, and kind of, yeah, from the 60s onwards, it was kind of like, like 18, 19 when we were getting married, having children very quickly after, all the rest of it. But that's been a massive shift now, and people are so much more focused on building a career, getting themselves set up properly first before having children, which again, sign of the changes that now, because women are allowed to have careers, because again, back in the 60s, women weren't allowed to have
Yeah,
careers,
they
and
were
that's
at
why they had
home.
babies so
Yeah.
young. Exactly. So yeah, there's been this really big shift that means that actually we have women who are in their 30s and 40s having children. I mean, and past that, to be fair. Um, and yeah, it's just, yeah, I guess it's a really interesting shift actually. But then it's also hard as, I mean, now like I'm in my 30s, but for someone that looks younger than she is, I often get, especially when I have no makeup on, I'll mention my children when I'm looking after them, and they'll be like, "You've got kids?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've got three." They're like, "Three?" And they're like, you can see them like trying to do the maths. I'm like, "I am 30." And they're like, "You really? You're 30?" And I'm like, "I know I look like an infant, but I am 30." And I was like, "I'll be really grateful for this when I'm 50 and I look like I'm 40."
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, to me, that's one of the things that it's a little bit scary because obviously I'm 36 in a couple of in
Hmm.
2 weeks. Um, and I have not had kids yet, and it's not because I didn't want to. It's
Hmm.
because like it's way harder than they make you look that
Hmm.
it is. And there's like a lot of
Oh yeah.
factors in between. I think I'm gonna have to go through the IVF route at this point, and
Hmm.
it petrifies me a little bit to know if I'm gonna be able at 36 to you
Yeah.
know keep up with kids, you know, at this
Hmm.
age. So that's why I was
Hmm.
asking, like, is difference between raising kids
Yeah, as I
earlier.
say, I think for me, it's mostly just that I'm tired from my other children. But I think there's a lot to be said for being older when you first start having children. So when I had Charlie, I was 23. And I mean, again, now knowing what I know about myself and that I'm autistic, I've always very much described myself as an old head on young shoulders, and I've always been quite mature for my age. But I think there's a lot to be said of having a lot of life experience going into being a parent for the first time. Um, just that kind of being able to deal with the hard times a lot easier. Um, you know yourself more in terms of what you want and what you value as a parent, as what you value in a partner that's raising your children with you, all of those things. I think there's a lot to be said for not just rushing into having kids when you're in your early 20s. Um, and whilst, yes, people might want to stick a label on you that says high risk, that absolutely still doesn't mean that you're not going to have a lovely low risk pregnancy and a lovely low risk delivery and all of those amazing things. Um, and yeah, I mean, like all the time we see women coming through our doors having started their journey with IVF because either they've just had fertility issues or they're just a little bit on like the advanced maternal age side, as they love to say at the NHS, or whatever it might be. And yeah, they get on fine, if not better, than some of the younger mums because, as I say, they've got all that life experience they're taking in with them, and they're just more settled. And I feel when you like now, if something's going on, say with Joseph, at him being like when he was a baby, I feel like I probably dealt with it better than I did with Charlie when he was a baby 7 years ago, just because I know how to deal with things better, I know how to process things better in my mind, all those kind of things. I think a lot of the time you're probably better equipped going into it in your 30s. I think
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's just the logistics that make it harder.
Oh, that makes me feel much better, to be honest. Like, because that's one of the things that I'm a bit petrified. Is like, am I gonna have like I'm gonna be able to move properly now in my late 30s?
Oh
God, my
yeah,
late
yeah. And it's one of
30s,
those
my
for
late
the
30s. What is this?
girl, we have loads of women having babies in their 40s and they're fine. If they can do it, you can. I think the oldest woman I've looked after was 52 and she was having her fourth baby, I think it was. She had a surprise pregnancy at 52, and
Yeah.
so everyone does it.
Okay.
Everyone does it. Don't count
Okay.
yourself out.
Well, now we're going to go into the next segment of the podcast. It's just something to be a little bit more fun. So we're going to do a little bit of like a rapid fire questions before we go into my over 30
Mm-hmm.
wisdom bolt. Okay. So I'm just going to ask you a few things and you just answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. But only lately. I've never enjoyed either of them, but at the minute I'm going through a bit of a phase with coffee. But it has to be
Okay.
so milky and sweet that it probably doesn't taste like coffee anymore.
So just milk with a touch of coffee.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Perfect. Um, what's one item that you cannot live without?
Probably my phone.
Yeah.
I know that's bad, but my whole life's on my phone. It crashed on me
Same.
last week and I had to reset it and I lost so much and I was just like, I can't cope. I think my memory is just so poor. If it's not in my phone, I'll forget it.
Yeah. You know what happened to me the other day? Like my phone was like, um, you're reaching kind of like the top of your storage. You need to
Uh,
free up space or whatever. And I was like, okay, fine, let's do that. I was like, okay, you can delete apps that you don't use. And I was like, oh, perfect. Yeah, let's do that. Me, to be honest, I think I might have a little bit of ADHD as well because I was just like a thousand things going through my mind and I wanted to do lots of things and I was like looking into it and I was like, oh yeah, that's fine, that's okay. Click OK. And as soon as I click OK, I realized that there were a few more pages, not just what I was seeing on the screen.
yeah.
It deleted I don't know how many apps from my phone. And I was like, what do you mean I don't use these apps? I've opened it. Like, I mean, yes, 3 months ago, but still I used it. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, installing. I was like, do I know my password? Oh, crazy, crazy. Okay, perfect. So let's go through the over 30 wisdom bolt because I don't really want to keep you here too long. I'm enjoying really our conversation a lot,
Me
but
too. My
I
kids are
think you
in
have
bed. I've got
things to
all the
do.
time in the world.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Oh, well, let's keep going. No, I don't want to keep you here forever. So there is like two questions that we are asking our guests in every single one of our podcasts. So one of them will be this is for the younger generation. What key piece of advice would you give to women in in their 20s?
I would say to just embrace where you are in life now. I think I wished away a lot of my teens and 20s. I think I was in such a hurry to grow up and be in my 30s, 40s. And I think, again, some of this is like a lot of my friends are older, my husband's older. I think I just kind of wished life away quite a lot rather than just embracing all the things that were happening at that point of time. Because I feel like, and again, I don't know whether some of this is because of the autism, ADHD, and now kind of knowing that about myself and kind of starting to accept myself more. I think I put so much pressure on, I'm not where I want to be, but I don't really know why. And I think some of that I wasn't actually where it wasn't actually that I wasn't where I wanted to be. It was actually that I just wasn't settled in who I was as a person. Because I think until I had that diagnosis, I was like, something's wrong, but I don't know what. Something's not quite right, but I don't know what. So I think it would probably just be to, yeah, not put pressure on yourself to be somewhere that you think you're supposed to be, because you're going to get wherever you need to be at the right time for you. Um, and just, yeah, just absorb everything as an experience, because it's just going to enrich who you are as a person, enrich the energy that you bring to everything else that you do, um, and enjoy the ride. Life goes so quickly. I think it's just
It does.
terrifying how quickly it
It
goes.
does. Yeah. Do
Um,
you think like what you just said about like enjoying the moment, wanting to grow up really fast and
mhm,
not being where you wanted to be and stuff? Do you think that has something to do with the generation where we like the atmosphere and everything that we grew up in? Because I believe I was exactly the same, and
mhm.
most people that I've talked to were exactly the same.
I think so, yeah. I think it's, we came from a generation where, like, so many, I don't know, I feel like there was just so much, like, look how successful this person your age is, look how successful this person your age is. It almost puts that subconscious kind of slant on everything where you're just like, oh,
Yes.
where are they compared to me?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't necessarily know why that then seeps into your subconscious to make you think that way, because like realistically I was just like, I mean, for me I was like, by 23 I was married, I had a child on the way, and I had my own house. So I don't know where I thought I was going wrong or what I didn't think I was achieving. I don't know whether for me it was like the career stuff, or I thought I'd be better in a better financial position. I don't know, but equally, when you get married, have a baby, and get a house that quickly to each other, you're not going to have a lot of money because that's all expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think we just, I mean, women are definitely worse for it than men are as well. We just put so much pressure on ourselves and compare ourselves
Yeah.
to everybody else for no logical reason at all, other than we're just too hard on ourselves, and we just value other people's success more than we value our own. Um, and we just put too much weight into what other people think. I feel like my husband always used to say to me, "Oh, when you're like, when you're in your 30s, you don't care as much about what other people think, and it's great." And I was like, "Oh, right. Well, I can't wait to get to that point, because I just care too much about what everybody thinks of me." Um, but now I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm like, I get it. I'm kind of not
Yeah.
as bothered now about what other people think of me, and not in a kind of rude, like, "Oh, I don't care what you think," but in a, what I think of myself has so much more weight than what a
Yeah.
stranger thinks of me that actually has no idea who I am, what I'm about. Um, because as long at the end of the day, as long as I sit okay with myself, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, exactly. You're content with yourself. You're happy with what you're doing. You're
Hmm.
happy where you are. And I think I think once you arrive to your 30s, you start looking back and see everything that you've done, what you have accomplished, and things like, oh, this thing that I thought it was like stupid. Now I'm looking back and I think like, wow, this was an
Hmm.
incredible achievement.
Yeah.
Whether back then we were thinking like, this was not good enough.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like, I
Yeah.
remember thinking like, I look back now and I think like, when traveling around the world when I was 18, I moved to the other side of the country when I was 19. I got engaged when I was 20. I got married when I was 22. baby at 23, and so on and so forth. And then I think sometimes I look and I think like, what am I actually comparing myself to? Because now, like, I'm in my 30s and I'm starting all over again in terms of career. I'm starting from
Mm-hmm.
the very bottom pecking order again. And that's fine because actually, whilst I might not be kind of like at a level that a lot of people are my age in terms of salary and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing something that I've dreamt of doing for years. It's been my absolute ultimate ambition in terms of career. And going forward, once I'm qualified and all the rest of it, I'm giving myself and my family a much better prospects and future in
Yeah.
terms of being able to progress than I would have if I just carried on as I was. Um, so yeah, like progress isn't linear. Like you'll chop and change and you'll go backwards and forwards, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Um, yeah, I think we just put too much pressure on ourselves, don't we, as women? I mean,
We
as people
do.
as a
We do.
whole,
And I
we put
think,
too much pressure on ourselves.
yeah. And I think it's one of those things of like starting over and thinking, oh, I cannot quit my job
Hmm.
because then I will leave all the progress behind and
Yeah.
starting fresh somewhere else or a completely new thing. But sometimes that is what you need to do because
Hmm.
clearly you were not happy
Hmm.
in the other job or whatever it is that you were doing. You
Hmm.
were not happy. And it is scary to start something new,
Hmm.
but it's never too late to be brand new.
No, never, never, never.
No. Okay, so now we're gonna go with uh now for all the women on their 30s and over. Um I don't know, maybe you don't have any of these, but what is one piece of unconventional wisdom that has helped you navigate your 30s?
Mm. It would probably be what my mum always says to me, and she said it to me since I was a teenager, is energy breeds energy. So when I am tired and I can't be bothered to do anything, my mum has always been one of those people, she's like, just get up and do it and you'll feel so much better for it. And like now I feel like when I'm knackered and I like when I'm knackered because I've got kids running around all
I bet.
over. It's non-stop. And I'll sit and I'll slump on the bed and I can't be bothered to do anything. My mum, I just hear in my back of my head going, energy breeds energy. And I'll get up and do whatever it is I've been putting off. And then I just feel so much better for it. Um, but I guess that's probably something that like anyone can take, not just over your 30s, but like, yeah, it's just, that's probably the main bit of
I'm
advice
gonna
I've
apply
ever got
that.
that sticks with me. It's just do it
I'm
because
gonna
you'll feel
apply
better
that to
for it.
myself when I have to clean my house.
Yeah,
That's what I'm gonna tell myself. I'm gonna say like energy brings energy. I'm just gonna
absolutely.
remember you saying that.
Absolutely, and it really does. And as you say, like whether it's cleaning the house, whether it's doing a bit of work, whether it's going out for a walk, exercise, going to the shop, doing anything that you've put off doing, as soon as you do it and you spend that energy doing it, after you just feel so much better and kind of like have a bit more like you feel a bit more
Hmm.
revitalized because you've done it and it's one less thing. Um, yeah, that's I always say my mum in my head, energy breeds energy.
That's gonna be on my head as well now, moving forward. I remember your mom. Um, so, is there anything that we have not touched based on that you want for us to talk about?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
No? Okay, well, Rachel is gonna go into Florida in August. When is the
Hmm.
pageant in August?
So
When
from
exactly?
we're going from the 12th to the 18th of August. So the 18th is actually my birthday as well. So I'll be there. The last day will be my birthday, which is really cool. Um,
Is the 18th the crowning?
uh, Crowning's on the 17th, and then the
It doesn't
Queen's
matter.
photo shoot is on the 18th, and we fly back on the 18th.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm sending goodbyes, visualizing.
I know, I know. So yeah, so we fly on the 12th and fly back on the 18th, but I'm just so excited. I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm full on obsessing. My suitcase is sat over there already half packed, and it's 4 months
What?
away.
Half packed?
Yeah. I think because I am A control freak, but B, so forgetful. I'm terrified I'm going to forget something important. So I
Mm.
have a huge checklist already about everything that I need to take with me. I have everything either I'm re-wearing or little things that I've already bought, I've bought. So I have everything, and all the stuff that I am not going to wear beforehand is packed away so I can't forget it. And
Yeah.
then that way, when we go, I only need to pack things like stuff for hair, makeup, shoes. So then I won't forget it, because otherwise I'll forget something really important like my gown, because
Yeah, no, and
that's
it's
how
not
my
one
brain
of
is.
those like you can drive to get it because you are on
Exactly,
the other side, and
exactly.
it's not like a
And
quick
everything's so
like,
expensive
please
in
someone
America.
bring
It's not
it.
like I could just go to a shop and buy another gown because they're fortunes in America. Um, so yeah, so I've already started to pack, but I think, yeah, I just can't stop thinking about it. I'm just so excited. Like, we haven't been abroad since 2020. We flew actually the same flight over to Orlando, and by the time we landed there, lockdown had hit, so we had to fly home on an emergency flight. Um, so actually, the last time I went on holiday before that was when I first fell pregnant with Charlie. My mum took me on a little baby moon, just me and her little baby holiday. So that would have been 2016. So I've not been abroad for 8 years. So I'm
Oh,
so excited to actually go away and have a proper trip away. Because as I say, Florida, we were there a couple of days and then came back. So it's the first proper holiday I've had for 8 years. So I'm so excited. I love flying. I love everything about it. I love the airport. That, like, all of that is just so exciting for me. So I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm doing Ryan's head
oh.
in because it's all I talk about.
Well, I mean, if it's, I'm pretty sure it was one of your dreams because if it was your very first pageant that you
Hmm.
did 10
I
years
just
ago.
never thought it was going to happen. My big goal for Galaxy UK this year was to be in the top five. So when I first competed in 2014, I remember thinking, like, I didn't place. I was so unconfident. I look back at the photos now and I just cringe because I'm just like absolute shell of myself. Um, and I remember just thinking, like, that was like, it was the ultimate goal to be a Galaxy Queen, but I just thought it was too big of a dream to accomplish. So top five was my big goal. I was like, if I can, like, the plan was that was going to be my last pageant. I was like, right, this is it. Final pageant. If I can make top five, goal made, like, perfect. That'll be me retired. Wonderful. Said to Ryan, it's going to be the last pageant and there'll be a break from, like, pageant appearances will be no more, all that kind of stuff. And he was like, great, get some time back. And then I won. And I was like, so
A
just
few
one more year.
more. Yeah, just a few more appearances and a year
Oh
and a half
dear.
because I'm winning the international crown as well.
That's the plan. That's the plan. So now again, like, yeah, like, I had a coaching session this week, and one of the questions was, what will you do if you win the international title? I was like, I've not even thought about that yet, because honestly, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that I've won the UK one. That felt like too big of a dream, let alone winning the
Yeah.
international one. Um, but yeah, go hard or go home, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, this is a great time for me to add my Be Timeless campaign. Like, it's never
Hmm.
too late to chase your
Absolutely.
dreams. No dream is too big. You are proof of that. Like,
I
you thought the
know.
dream was too big, you still went for it,
Yeah,
and great outcome.
yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really, really surprising as well. I think the one that I really wanted to win was Best in Interview. I really wanted to get Best in Interview because I feel like that was always where I struggled the most. Um,
Hmm.
One of my things that I mask the most with my autism is my social skills. I really struggle with it. I find it really hard. I have to think about things like making eye contact. Like, a lot of people don't have to think about, I
Hmm.
have to think about it. And then I end up overthinking about it. And then I feel like I'm staring at people. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to, like, not look at them for 30
Awesome.
seconds because I've stared at them too much. And it's intense. um, and I really struggle with making conversation in, like, kind of general, like, when I go to pageant events, I love it, but I get so anxious because I really struggle with the social side of it. So for me, I was like, to win Best in Interview would just be amazing because it would mean that not only have I felt great about it, but I know that they've felt great about it as well. So winning that was amazing. But then I also won best in evening, best in swim, and best in fashion, which just blew my
Full
mind.
swoop,
Yeah, I know.
everything. And you were, I remember when we were texting we were texting you with Annabelle, you were like, I tripped in swimwear. And I was like,
I know.
you recovered very well. It's fine.
Yeah,
You tripped in UK's national miss and you won.
exactly,
This is a
exactly.
sign. It's a sign.
Yeah, but now it's nice
And
because
look
I
at
feel like
you.
I can say to people, like, go, like I was judging Crown UK at the weekend, and just being able to say to people, like, don't worry about tripping. I tripped both times I won national titles. As long as you recover it, it's fine. And it's really nice to kind of be able to say
Exactly.
that as well. So yeah,
Yeah. I say that to people as well because every single rehearsal that I've done in my pageants, I've tripped and fallen, like on my butt,
yeah,
literally. And it's like, and it was fine. It was
yeah,
fine at the end. So it's okay. It's
yeah.
okay. It's all good. Okay, well, thank you so, so much for joining us in the Females Thriving Over 30 podcast. If people want to follow you, follow your journey to Galaxy, follow everything that you're doing with autism, ADHD, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, and my handle is Mrs. Galaxy UK.
Yay! And then it's going to be Mrs. Galaxy International. We are putting that out there. So, everybody listening, please
Manifest,
make
manifest,
sure
manifest,
that
manifest.
you visualize and manifest that for Rachel. So thank you. I'll edit this out. Oh, thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Females Thriving Over 30. Please remember to always follow us on our social media. We are at Females Thriving Over 30 on Instagram, at Females Thriving Over 30 in TikTok. And you can follow me as well on Instagram and TikTok as Soraya Gucci Luth, Gucci as the brand Gucci, and at Jasmine Foley for Jasmine's Instagram and TikTok. So yeah, hopefully see you soon in the next episode. Bye.